He not only did it his way, he had also his own way of philosophy. Hey guys, MasakoX here. It's been a while since we've talked about the likes of Cell, and considering that he is quite possibly my favourite Dragon Ball villain of all time, that is saying a lot. I have been restraining myself. I can't go on any longer not doing this, so I think it's time to dust off the cobwebs of the topic that is Cell, and discuss some different angles and perspectives that you can take with the character that will make you see him in a fresh new light. I mean, considering we've been doing the same with the likes of Dr. Gero and Majin Buu, you can check out the links to them up top. Now, don't worry, with those other two, I kind of went in an unusual angle, but for this one, this is pretty much a little bit more standard, but also at the same time, a little bit more introspective. And Cell isn't weird. Well, okay, he may be weird when you first see him because he drinks people, and that in itself is weird, but you know where I'm getting at. But before we begin though, I'd just like to point out that I have a second channel dedicated to my more personal content that is non-Dragon Ball related, as well as just my general life, where you can ask me questions and we can put more videos about different types of anime and whatnot. So if you want to check that out, go and subscribe, links down below and again up top, and I hope to see you there. Now back to Cell. This guy, There's a reason why I love him. He's quite possibly one of the best written villains in the entirety of Dragon Ball. Now I know that Frieza wins the popularity polls, and I do get why. He is a pretty formidable foe, and given how I've talked about him in the past, he came at a really opportune moment in the history of Japan, especially in the economic side. Now, I know, Frieza has done more than his fair share of trying to hype up the series and ensuring its status as one of the biggest and most legendary series in the world, but there's just something about Cell's story and Cell's arc which just feels more meaningful to me. He arrives at the point of the story where our heroes have to face their biggest challenge yet, themselves. Everything that had come before them and everything that had made them them was now being thrown against them, and it was up to the likes of Gohan, the brand new generation, from the old Dragon Ball to Z, to really pass on the torch. It was all so deep and symbolic, and really marking the winds of change for the series. Shame those winds decided to just peter out and then kind of go backwards. And even though he shares a lot of traits with Frieza and Buu, and yes, I know the latter can be forgiven because basically Buu was based kind of off of Cell, you know, regeneration, all that kind of stuff, Cell is pretty unique in one aspect: his view on the world. And it all has something to do with his makeup. The other two big villains of Dragon Ball Z are relatively simple, them being the embodiments of tyranny and chaos. But Cell is the only villain that, in my opinion, develops through his time in the series. I mean, he literally develops for one, and not just the physical forms because he got that with Frieza, I'm talking about mentally as well. When we first meet him in his most bug-like form, he is very sneaky and cautious. Instinct is the name of the game here. He is like a fungal parasite, just trying to find a means to exist. The difference between a fungus and Cell though, you know, is because he can talk and he can punch things, because that's just what Dragon Ball characters do. He does have a personality. It's not like he's a husk or anything, but honestly, the instinct and the drive to find his siblings and then to drink them overrides any kind of, you know, morals or kind of values or anything that would make a person, you know, sentience. It's just about getting the eyes on the prize. And he's also aware that he is not an apex predator, at least not yet. He is aware that there are bigger fish out there in the sea that could easily devour him if he's not careful. I mean, think about it, this could be a what if in itself. Had Cell not been as cautious as he was with Piccolo and decided to escape instead of to actually listening to his sane instinct and fight the guy, then things might have ended a lot earlier than expected. You know, Piccolo could have easily just vaporized him or something. Ironically though, in his most primitive form, he was actually at his most strategic. Everything was calculated and measured, despite him having the appearance of a simple bugman. Looks can be deceiving. In this form, for most of the time he was on screen, he spent most of his time just creeping around in the shadows, seeking to not really engage in the fighting, and instead just waiting for the right moment to pounce. The prime example of this is during the 17 Piccolo fight. He didn't jump in immediately and just get into the brawl. He waited for the right moment when they were all really distracted with the fight and they were kind of exhausted, and then go. He didn't just attack as soon as he saw them, and really we could forgive him for doing that. If he'd been waiting to try and absorb 17, then you would just want to jump on that immediately. You totally want to hit that. He knew that would have been foolish, so instead, prior to that, he would try and satisfy his hunger by feasting on weaker humans. He knew that they posed no threat to him. And in a way, if you think about it, Imperfect Cell is an example where Frieza and Piccolo's DNA was much more dominant than the Saiyan DNA. He knew when not to do things, and we all know that Saiyans like to do things when they really shouldn't. But his personality took a drastic change when he transformed though. Once he absorbed Android 17, he became so much more self-obsessed, narcissistic, and just generally desperate. It almost brought out the Saiyan in him, and from then on, Semi-Perfect Cell became much more of a brawler, wanting to get stuck in at times when he really shouldn't have. Imperfect Cell was far more dangerous because you couldn't really get a read on the guy. With Semi-Perfect Cell, yeah, that's just a big tough brute. No wonder he didn't stick around for very long. So in a way, despite the power increase he got, it kind of made him a much easier foe to stand off against. And we saw that with Vegeta and Trunks. Once they got a power increase themselves, they were able to kind of really dominate. His tantrums were legendary, and it ensured his enemies that he would make a mistake and they would be able to exploit it. His initial desire for sustenance through any means necessary was gone. It was just one fixed point. He was gonna do anything in his power to get it, even if it might not have been the smartest method of doing so. Gone were the days of Imperfect Cell and being sneaky, and then jump. No, I'm just gonna hit it! Roar! But that doesn't mean that his cunning and scheming isn't gone entirely. They've just been pushed to the background. And at times, he does prove to be somewhat cunning because he knows what he wants to get from Vegeta. He's able to do so. You see, Cell may be much more impertinent now, but he understands his enemy, and that is a Saiyan. This shows that this form of Cell has a certain trace and reference to himself. He knows what he is about. He knows that he is part Saiyan, like Vegeta. He can relate. He knows how to push Vegeta's buttons. When he can focus, he is formidable, but that is very rare. We all like to mock this form for being rather churlish and dumb, but that's not really the case. And all of this leads into the third act, the crescendo. Now things are beginning to get much more interesting when Cell reaches his final form. Yeah, because after all, this was the main goal in the series. And in a weird twist of fate, this villain actually won. Kinda. Toriyama has documented constantly that he only got to Perfect Cell after much editorial meddling from his superiors, Yu Kondo, as we've talked about before. But after all of that, it does prove that even if Toriyama is getting really frustrated by being told what to do, he can come up with the goods when he's pushed. All of this led to a remarkable journey with an iconic villain, and even though he does like to complain of, oh, I don't like having to draw all the spots, he looks fantastic. By reaching his final form, Perfect Cell has become what many people in narrative ways describe as the Übermensch. That's German for Superman or Beyond Man. Or should I say Beyond Bug? Or at least this could be described as the darker incarnation of this concept. And this concept of philosophy was bred by Friedrich Nietzsche. In his 1883 book, Thus Spoke Zarathustra, Nietzsche has his character Zarathustra pose the idea that the Übermensch is the ultimate goal of man. Let's take to the wiki for a brief insight. Nietzsche introduces the concept of the Übermensch in contrast to his understanding of the otherworldliness of Christianity. Zarathustra proclaims the will of the Übermensch to give meaning to life on Earth, and admonishes his audience to ignore those who promise otherworldly fulfillment to draw them away from the Earth. The turn away from the Earth is prompted, he says, by a dissatisfaction with life that causes the sufferer to imagine another world which will fulfill his revenge. The Übermensch grasps the earthly world with relish and gratitude. And yes, Cell's grasp on the Earth is a bit on the sadistic side, but he certainly enjoyed his new form of life and he was really keen to test the limits of it at 200% volume. And what sets Cell even closer to the idea of the Übermensch is also the term that Nietzsche proposed, the last man. You can actually say in a way that the last man syndrome or principle is like what we see with Thanos in Avengers Infinity War. You know, the goal of redressing the balance of life. The life of the last man is seen as a much more pacifistic role, something that is much more comfortable, not wanting to take risks. And all of this happens after the acquisition of their goal, of course. Even the likes of Kira from Diamond is Unbreakable, the fourth part of JoJo, exhibits this throughout the entirety of the series. He just wants to have peace, and he will do anything to get it. He just wants to have a quiet life. These people are getting in the way, so he's just gonna dispose of them. The goal isn't for domination outright, is just trying to settle the score. A piece in their own image, no matter how warped the concept may be. Social conflicts and challenges are practically non-existent. It's essentially a herbivorous existence. Nothing really goes on. Everything's the same. The whole idea of the last man's reality is to try and achieve a superficial state of harmony. Nietzsche warned that a society carved out by the last man would really be detrimental to the human condition. The last man is only possible though by mankind giving birth and really kind of encouraging the principles of not really pushing the boundaries, having no creative thought, choosing to live a simple life, not gambling at all, just kind of plodding along. The life of the last man is completely opposite to the Nietzsche idea of the lust for power. And we all know that Cell has been at odds with pacifism and equality. He, in his mind, is the Ubermensch fighting against the last man, which is humanity. As flawed as Nietzsche's philosophy might be, Cell inherits only the worst aspects and the most negative aspects of that view. So it feels even more fitting that the person to take him down is the biggest pacifist in the room, Gohan. In this context, Cell's fall might not just be talking about his own literal fall in the story, but also as a critique of the soulless looking for perfection. Due to him having the personality of all the Z fighters, Goku, Vegeta, everyone else could view Cell as a dark mirror, reflecting the bad qualities of their selves, where things could have gone had they truly become bad. And I think it's often overlooked that Cell was a big contributor to Goku and Vegeta's development, how they truly ended up. I mean, Goku was pushed to having to sacrifice himself again, and Vegeta's life really became much more calm after that. Now you may be thinking, Masako, aren't you overthinking this just a little bit? And your answer is, well, yes. But you see, the process of thought is just trying to think of something new. Whether it's a painting that you see in a museum, or if it's a book by Ernest Hemingway, or even if it's a 30-year-old anime that you truly love, doesn't mean that you have to think the same way throughout your entire time with that product. Evaluate. That is what my history teacher at college taught me. Try and look for something hidden away, something that wasn't said. If you do, you could find really cool and cultural contexts that weren't open to you before. Some can be rather personal, some could be rather groundbreaking, and some could just purely make sense. By adding an additional layer to Perfect Cell and his other forms, we can truly elevate his status within the show even higher, making him the truly perfect opponent for our heroes. So what do you guys think? Do you think Cell is deeper than other baddies? Do you still prefer Frieza over him? Leave a comment below and let's get this discussion going. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. Until the next one, be sure to like and subscribe. Catch you later!